All right, 10 o'clock on the dot, just as we promised late last night. Welcome into the Sam Houston postgame football show. The Bearkats fall to UNLV. Oh, man, a lot of the same mistakes. Kind of a Groundhog Day, funky atmosphere. Are there a few talent deficiencies? Do we have a quarterback controversy? People always love those. So we're going to get into all of it, plus your comments. Make sure you sound off in those comments. We'll bring them up. I just realized we could bring them up. I'm sorry, I had a slow moment. I'm an Aggie. Blunt, sue me. All right. So make sure that you're subscribed to everything down in the comments as well, down in the description. Share this, subscribe, retweet all of this. This is not about me. If something happened to me and if I was down in Houston and got Houstoned and came up missing, so I expect one of you all to get on here and make this happen. I'm blessed to have made it back. Happy to be here. But this is about you all. So go ahead and share all of this. Make sure everyone knows that we're here. We're going to do this. We got a hard out at 11. All right. So if you all start commenting, we're done at 11. Got family time, got other college football. I know a lot of y'all secretly are real hyped for that Texas game. That's okay. We're going to get into it right now. If you want to also, don't forget the Bearkat Bites t-shirt. You can go ahead and get that as well. The link's in the description. So let's go ahead and start it off. It was a funky night at Shell Energy. Just weird. You know, let me tell you something. Again, you all know I spent a lot of time in East Texas and things like that. The heat there is just enough different than the one here in Houston. You know what I'm saying? And I know both very well that it's different. It's different. We had some Bearkat officials and things walking around. Man, it's humid. You know, I'm sweating too, but I'm good. I'm good, you know, because I'm used to it. You know, I've grown up here and where we're based out of and things like that. You know, and that's not to take anything away from anyone, but that added to the funky. You know, the team from the Piney Woods got to come down here to the steamy, basically ports, big city, oil city of Houston, and make it work for now 4 more games. And it felt every bit of the grind for them. I think it felt every bit of the grind for Sam Houston. Not a ton of people, you know, that 5,000 official number that we saw, some of those official numbers that are matriculating out, those are doing a lot of work. The people that were there were very loud. People that were there were very much into it. Even late in the game in the fourth quarter, when Sam Houston maybe, quote, you know, could basically cover the spread. When Sam Houston could have basically covered the spread, that's what ended up happening. But overall, as I pull up some of the stats here, overall, just a weird, funky night. Okay. There were probably maybe 1,200 because you got to understand Sam Houston also had the dubious distraction of having to play on the same night that the Astros were. And I said that this was probably the last time they'd have to do it, but I erred. I was wrong. If the Astros make the playoffs, well, that October 9th game, we don't know. Trust me, I'm a longtime Astros fan, man. That's not going to be that might be a game night as well. So again, that it's going to be very interesting. Just a weird kind of night. I think that kind of contributed as well. Just at halftime, you got Sam Houston just kind of hanging their heads a little bit against UNLV and the Rebels are ready to go. But Sam Houston falls 38-21. Even at halftime, when the game was kind of in the balance, it's like, I need to see a few more guys jogging off the field. I need to see some guys say, hey, come on, we got this. That's a little concerning. That's a little concerning. Okay. As we go through some of the odds and ends that I saw, what do you all think about that? I don't know if you all watched it on TV, I don't know if it showed, but if some of you all were peppered throughout the game and saw them run in at halftime, what did you all see? I saw just kind of a dejected team. Phil Longo talked about the character was good. Maybe he means that, they're down, but all right, we're going to do this. It's the work. I got to do it, which is fine. That's good for a job, 9 to 5 that we do every day. But this is football. Ideally, you want to be there. Ideally, you're there because you want to be. And you got to get fired up. Somebody's got to yell and bang a helmet on somebody. I'm not seeing that. And especially when you look across the field at UNLV, you got Dan Mullen. You all saw it on my Twitter. Go on there, Bearkat Bites. Links in the description. Dan Mullen's running out with the team. He's high energy. it's a whole different thing. Mullen really is the type of guy, and this isn't I'm not joining the early horns to fire Phil Longo, but as far as Mullen's energy, that is what Sam Houston needs right now. And in a head coach, they need that because they're at a talent deficiency, or are they? We're going to talk about that. So that was the entire thing. It felt like a home game for Sam Houston in many ways. There's some longtime people who've covered the program and things. It felt different. And you got 4 more times, and 2 of them are in the middle of the week. Oh, crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. So we saw some odd things, odds and ends, odd stuff. By the way, we also saw this as well. This was odd, right in that wheelhouse. The quarterback change out. The quarterback change out. What do we think about that? What do you think about that? What was up with that? Mabry M, and I don't want to butcher his name, so I'm just going to say Mabry, number 3 for Sam Houston, backup quarterback or quarterback 1A, whatever you want to call it, comes in for Sam Houston, throws the terrible pick 6, the rare pick 6 from beyond the line of scrimmage. Holy cow. And we're going to post it too. We're going to post it. And as an aside, the newsletter will be out Sunday. Again, we got a hard out at 11. We got other stuff to see. We got family stuff going on. So that's the beauty of independent media. We can set the schedule some. There's no hard deadlines. As long as it's out by Monday, when people come back to the world, quote unquote, they'll be fine. So there's a quarterback, quote, carousel. Maybe I won't call it a controversy. We'll call it a carousel. That sounds a little more friendly, right? So the quarterback carousel at Sam Houston. Phil Longo said that he answered this and said that the plan for this was last week at Western Kentucky, but Hunter just kind of played and he kind of felt it out and things like that. Like, oh man, I don't know. And then Longo now felt that now was the time to get Mabry in the game, which, I have seen that before. You got a guy, you don't want a guy making his first college football start in a hostile environment. I can see that. You know what I mean? You look at Dan Mullen. Now, Dan Mullen, some of you will say, well, Dan Mullen started it in week 1. Well, Dan Mullen's got 2 guys who have played before. Calandrea, who was pretty good. We'll talk about how he was pretty good. We'll get to him. Believe that. And then who was it? Virginia. Then you got Alex Origi, who did have a guest appearance. He didn't fumble this time. Instead, it was a loss of yards. Good play for Sam Houston front 7, but he played at Michigan. So those guys were not making and it was at home. It was in Las Vegas. So I imagine that had this been the first game, as was the plan, before even UNLV changed their schedule. Remember, there were schedule changes as they're kind of crafting out what this season's going to look like, right? So it kind of makes sense. What we need to see with the quarterback carousel is moving forward. What is this going to look like? What is going to happen with this moving forward? All right. But, Hunter Watson, again, the problem with him, and Phil Longo, he didn't say it, but, he said if one of these guys separates himself, great. That basically means if one of these guys, A, takes care of the football, not a pick 6, and B, can actually hit the receivers, they'll be fine. The receivers are open. They actually played fairly well. The problem is, how many of those passes was Hunter off? How many was he out of time with? I believe it was Coco Brown he was throwing to, or Smith Mack. I can't remember, but he throws it right to him, and the linebacker's right there to pop him. I'm like, you're going to get a guy hurt doing that, So let's see. The problem is Mabry's second start is on the road. The schedule is just so funky and wonky. This is the season from Funky Town, so it's hard to navigate, and we won't know. It's not until October 9th that they're coming back, quote, home to Houston. So there's that. I mean, but Hunter Watson, his passes, that's what's getting him in trouble. That's why this is even some sort of race. Because let me tell you something. If Hunter's putting up 250 yards, 2 touchdowns, 85 yards on the ground, maybe even a touchdown there. And he had one last night. Maybe we don't see Mabry. Maybe we don't see Mabry. So that's kind of what I think about that. What do we think about that? And by the way, well, hang on. Let me get to that. Let me get to some of your comments first. What's going on here? I think Longo was just trying to help Hunter regroup when he put in the other QB. You think so? I don't know. I really do think that that was the plan, because I've said all off season that Hunter will be the starter, but short leash. So if he starts airmailing that stuff, you know, Longo's like, I got a guy who knows my system. The problem with Mabry is he can't when the defenses start to shift, he kind of buckles under that. He's got to be able to read this stuff a little bit better, and it's confusing. Got big arm, big strength, all of that, but the mental, and that's not saying he's stupid, like the processing, that's hard. If you or I got out there, that's going to be tough, right? So I don't know if it was a regroup. You know, and if it was a regroup, then, you know, that speaks to what I'm saying about him missing the passes. Yeah, well, regroup from missing those. We're going to put the other guy in. So, and again, if the stats were a lot more juiced from Hunter and he had a lot more control of the game and moving it down the field consistently, which kind of stopped there, especially at the end of the first half, you start to be okay, because that's when this thing really kind of started to spiral out of control. That's really when the entire thing started to spiral out of control, right? Let's see. Also, I saw some of this. What do y'all think about this? It was the low tempo offense. The low tempo offense right there. I want to talk to you about that. I want to talk to you about the low tempo offense. Now, on the field, to me, you know, it looked like there were a few problems with timing, you know, with getting the ball. Perhaps the kind of shakeup at offensive line on the left side, which still played terrible despite that. Longo still, you know, he wants to rotate 8 guys. He does not have 8 guys. He wants to, meaning that they don't have that. Okay. So, and the problem, excuse me. And so I thought that was the problem, but the idea was to tamp down things, kind of control the ball a little bit, you know, convert some third downs. The problem for Sam Houston, 1 for 12 on third down. Now they were 3 for 6 on fourth down. They were 3 for 6 on fourth down. You know, some of that was kind of towards the end of the game, but 1 for 12 on third down, that's not going to cut it. Okay. That's not going to cut it. Excuse me. And then some of you all will start to say, well, what about the tight ends? Why aren't they getting involved? It's, you know, they almost need to use those guys more for blocking. The problem is they're not quite the block, not quite, but they are, but then they aren't. You know, they're these perfect middle guys. You know what I mean? And the thing is, the whole point of a tight end in the passing game, using him like you all say, be a fail-safe. Somebody that's just wide open, right? There's guys that's wide open for Sam Houston. Smith-Mack was wide open. The problem is he was overthrown a lot of the time. You know, ball thrown way too far in front of him. Things like that. So we'll see what happens with the tempo. They wanted to do that to try to limit UNLV's possessions. And the time of possession was fairly even. The time of possession was fairly even. By the way, Sam Houston played just 4 penalties, 8 penalties the whole game. 8 penalties the whole game. And a lot of them were just pass interferences that, you know, just kind of happened. By the way, so Sam Houston played a fairly clean game. So as far as like mental errors, some of that stuff was cleaned up. Some of that as far as the penalties, so that wasn't terrible. The problem is, again, you're overthrowing guys. Okay? And then the problem also is what we're talking about next. You're also getting burned on defense. Again. Now, Alonzo Edwards did a couple of good things, but a lot of that was in front of him. A lot of that was just, oh, we're going to throw the ball right here to the flat. Oh, I can do that. I can get around this guy. Okay, I can get around this, quote, blocker that really just wants to run down and catch the ball and hit the guy. The problem is when Jaden Bradley is going downfield. The problem is when Irvin Jr. is going downfield and he's wide open for Calandria. You can't leave your guys on an island like that. Alonzo Edwards, once again, burned. You know, you can't do that. That's not going to work. You know, Iman Allen is right now is probably your best cornerback. Iman Allen right now is probably your best cornerback, and even he's not, you know, someone you feel all the way good about. Although he does some good things, he does. But that's the problem. I think that that's a talent deficiency. Here on the defense, you know, and the way to me that you remedy that is a more zone. So we'll see if they do that, because even in the passing game, you know, the idea is that the defensive backs get in there and attack. But the problem with that is a lot of times they were just running three guys, you know, and there was an effort to mix it up. But whether you're rushing three, whether you're rushing four, even if you rush five, there's just there's no pressure on these quarterbacks. Look at Maverick McIver's jersey at the end of the game. Look at Anthony Colandrea's jersey at the end of last night. Clean jerseys, clean. Now there's been a couple of sacks. There was the Chris Eaton play early in the I believe that was in the second quarter. That was pretty good. Quadro Pratt. He had a nice play there in the second quarter, but you know, there has to be more of that. Dylan Frazier, of course, made an appearance. They were fine in the run game. They only gave up 91 yards rushing. They only gave up 91 total yards rushing. And that's Jayden Thomas. Now, I did include a Jayden Thomas touchdown. He did average 7.2 yards. Hang on. Oh, hang on. I'm sorry. Sorry. They only gave up 65 yards to Jayden Thomas. Sorry about that. As the game wore on, they started giving up those yards. You know, with the game in the balance, it was about 91 yards. Now it ballooned to 155 because again, it's humid. They've been out there a lot. That's why going back to the offense, Phil Longo wanted to talk about tamping that down. What do you think? I'll read your comments on here. What do you all think about that? What do you all think about the defense? There was a Trey Harris appearance for those of you all who wanted to see some of that. Going back to the offense as well, Alton McCaskill was out. He's questionable. He's going to be questionable going forward. So, you know, I had to ask Phil Longo about that after the game because it's like, well, there was there was an allusion to it, but then there wasn't. It's really with Phil Longo when he's doing the interviews post games, it's really what he doesn't say, or even his weekly pressers, because he was talking about how there was a lot of guys in the running back room and how we may see some others. But yeah, because these guys aren't because one of our guys is hurt. But they did have a deep room. Clearly, Elijah Green did some okay things. Coco Brown, man. How about Coco Brown? 145 yards on the ground total for Sam Houston. 85 yards. Coco Brown behind a more inferior offensive line, and James Dawn was out second straight game. They're probably going to bring him back probably for conference play, probably after the Texas game. Coco Brown, 8.5 yards a carry and a touchdown. That's not bad. You know, the problem is, again, the talent issues on defense. They've got to get some pass rush. There's no pass rush. If you're going to leave them in zone in man coverage for the DBs, or if the zone doesn't work, then you're going to have to find some guys who can get after it. And again, there's just names that we don't see. Where's Keelan Cox? You know, stuff like that. You know, if it's going to be that porous, some of these guys got to be ready. Maybe Cox is out of shape. I'm going to have to find out about that. You know, sometimes guys got to get in shape during the season. I remember Dirk Nowitzki did that with the Mavericks. Let's see. I don't know how to feel about this team as we got some comments here. Based on these two games, I don't see us winning much. You know, there's just enough porous on the schedule later in the season that maybe they can pull some out, but yeah, you're right. But, to your point also, this is about what I expected the first two games. Go back again, go ahead. By the way, if there is a free option to subscribe to the newsletter. If you're a paid subscriber, you'll get this shirt, holiday gift. I give people random stuff. I got stuff from there, but I digress. But the point of me saying that is we talked over the off season about, okay, what is this season going to look like? How's it going to unfold? And I said the first 4 games, I need to see how dialed in are they? Are they feeling good? How are they improving? You know what I mean? Because if there's a certain quote aura, as the youngins will say, aura to the team, even if they're 0-4 or 1-3, well, then they're going to hit conference play, some of the easier parts, and some of that's going to be at home on the midweek. They can grind out some wins, right? I'm still there. I'm still on the train, but I'm sitting on the caboose thinking about it. Is that fair? As far as the season, as far as an independent media observer, I'm on the train, but I'm walking to that caboose and looking like, man, that's a nice little beach side we jumping off at. Maybe we could just hang out there till 2026 train rolls around. But this is about what I thought. I thought these were 2 really good teams coming into the season that Sam Houston had to face. And Longo voices, again, he said it without saying it, voices frustration about having to play that 0-week game, then having to play this one, then go to Hawaii. But again, it's, Sam, the bill is due. I said this at the beginning of the season as well. The bill is due. This is the schedule you signed up for. You want to play big time FBS football. You don't want to schedule Stephen F. Austin. You don't, you have all these constraints on your schedule and how things have to be done. You don't have the NIL, So this is what it looks like. And to me, the best situation that they had looked like 5 wins. The really good one, if they got the pass rush and some other stuff down, looks like probably 7 wins. But I picked 5. The over-under, remember, was 4.5. So let's see what happens in Hawaii. Let's see what happens. But again, that's always a weird game for teams to go to. We really won't know much as the dog's barking in the back. Sorry. We really won't know much until really they get to New Mexico State. But even that's a home game. This is going to be one of the more holistic seasons for Sam Houston. You're going to have to wait till all the way at the end of the season, that day after Thanksgiving game against FIU, to see what all of this was and what it means going forward. It's going to be a very interesting offseason. This is going to be a very interesting season leading up to a very possibly even more interesting offseason. Because what does this mean going forward? You're going to be entering this next year will be year 4 in FBS. You know what I mean? You're going to be moving to the new stadium, all that stuff. So that's going to be interesting. Yeah. Oh, this is a good question. Didn't get to see much of the game. Did we do a 3-man rush? Yes. There and that was a problem. There was the 3-man rush. Yes. I get it to some degree. The linebackers play very well, and they especially play well in the pass coverage, underneath pass coverage. And that's because they do rush 3. Those other guys know how to get back and kind of, stop that stuff. I think that's kind of what they're playing when they do that. I think they're just kind of having a chess match with the offensive coordinator. By the way, Brennan, first year guy, he's a young guy too, young brother. And he called a pretty good game for Dan Mullen last night. He called a pretty good game. He really out-schemed Freddie Autry-Lindsay, the defensive coordinator for Sam Houston. He really out-schemed him, and he purposely ran started off with a little bit of the underneath, hit him downfield, no adjustments. And then after that, it's like, well, we don't have to have our guy, the message has been sent. Now we'll hit him for the run. That's why, towards the end of the game, it was 91 yards rushing that Sam Houston had given up. It ballooned to 155 yards. And that's because the front seven was worn out. They were worn out. But yeah, keep your comments coming. Keep your comments coming. And then finally here, if you don't have any more comments, this is the last point I had planned. Should the Cats have paid Keeler? Oh man, we had folks reveling and partying about it. It was Mardi Gras down there in New Orleans for them. Whoa! Oh, by the way, that was where Sam Houston's last Casey Keeler Bowl was, in New Orleans. So some folks are still down there on Bourbon Street partying. Because they were waiting for these two losses. See, they should have paid Keeler long ago. There you go. 2 games into year 1 of a coach's tenure, they're already to make declarative statements. Already ready to make declarative statements. You at least have to give it a year. Now, let me tell you something. This isn't an Aggie show, but I am a Texas Aggie. Sue me. For me, I'll just tell you a hot take. Mike Elko's not the guy. He's not the guy. And I arrived at that after the Texas game. This was after the embarrassing loss to South Carolina. This was after the embarrassing loss to Auburn. This was at the end of the embarrassing loss to Texas. It was because of the post-game comments that I had heard. I had heard concerning things, but that was at the end of the first year. You got to take it holistically. Oh, goodness. So should the Cats have paid Casey Keeler? All of this stuff. Well, first of all, they couldn't afford him. So stop it with these false hypotheticals, okay? First of all, they couldn't afford the guy. He got a nice raise. I think almost tripled his salary. I think if he hits incentives, he'll have tripled his salary if he was getting at Sam Houston. If he gets Temple to a bowl, if he gets them to 6 wins, if he grinds them out to 6 wins and every game is 17-3, they're gonna but and that's not to be crass or crap on Sam Houston. That's not that at all. The answer is they couldn't afford him. So, if the point of me saying that is, okay, well, we wanted this coach or that coach. The problem is, given the salary level, and Phil Longo took a pay cut. Again, we got a newsletter post. You can go back in our archives. We break down Longo's contract. It's a pay cut, but he was forced out of Wisconsin. It not necessarily take what you can get, but, you need a job. And this one happens to be a really cool one that's going to, probably give you some time. You know the place, right? So if you're Sam Houston, you can either get that type of guy who came from that story I told you, or go super young. Now that worked for Arizona State. Now I know that they interviewed Rashard Samples, the Oregon running back coach. I know they interviewed a couple of younger guys and younger names. I know there were a few other names that were tossed around, but the point of that is, that's what you are if you're Sam Houston, right? And then the thing about that also is you got to wait till the end of the season. You got to wait. Needed to pay Keeler. Yeah. NIL instead of a prep. Yeah, right. Yeah, we talked about that this past week as well on the weekly. And we also talked about that on the podcast as well. Yeah, by the way, go ahead and subscribe too. Go ahead and subscribe if you all aren't subscribed. Yeah, they need to pay Keeler and set aside some NIL. Yeah, well, yeah, it is. That's what they had to do. But you got Bobby Williams there when you talk to him. I think he's starting to come around to the notion that, okay, this isn't how it used to be, where if we just build some top-notch facilities, they're just going to show up because we got to pay the guys now. I think he's starting to come around to that. A lot of people label Bobby Williams as old-fashioned and things like that. And a lot of that is true, but I think he's starting to come around to that idea that, okay, you know what I mean? We need some money to keep these guys here and pay them pay better coaches, pay better, athletes and all of that stuff, And Phil Longo might be that better coach or whatever. You never know. But we'll see. We'll see. Next week they are at Hawaii. Next week they are at Hawaii. Now we're going to do something special next week. We're going to do something special next week. We're going to be not at Hawaii. Sorry. We do have a couple surprises coming for you all later this year, but no, sorry guys. We're not going to be at Hawaii. That was a staple. Sorry. We're not going to be there, but we will be there on immediately after. We want you guys to sound off because some of you sickos are going to be up watching it. Now, this isn't going to be a situation. Let me tell you what happened with me last night as an aside, by the way. Let me tell you what happened with me. I ended up just missing the last train that left. I took the train in to the stadium, didn't want to park, covered the game. I literally saw it pull off. It may not have even been the last train. That's the thing. And so because it was so late, the game started at 8:30. Another funky thing about the game. And so I ended up calling an Uber or a Lyft. I like Lyft a lot better. But what ended up happening for me with that was I got back super, super late. Wifey's mad at me, all that type of stuff. It happens. I told her there's no more Friday games and there's no more home 8:30 games. There's none of that. The others start at 6, one starts at 7, and that's a Wednesday. That's a work week anyway. We'd be tired anyway. And then the other two after that are home games, one of which we will not be there for the Delaware game. We will miss the Delaware game. We won't be there. But that's okay. That's okay. I have one fall book event for my other independent writing works, but you don't care about that. That's just an aside. So what that means is, I had to drive back and do that stuff. That's why we didn't do the post game right after Sam Houston's game. I always want to do it 15 minutes after, but given that it's the home game here, it's tough. It's tough to do that this year. So definitely the away games, we can do that. There's a couple of funky ones in November. We'll talk about that. Definitely in the midweek games, we'll try to do some midweek madness, late night stuff. We're gonna see. But all of that's coming. All of that's coming. Next week is Hawaii. So you guys, make sure you get some sleep next week because the Cats travel out there. So we'll see you all. Make sure you all share, subscribe, let people know what we're doing. You all be safe. It's college football today, the first full weekend. Enjoy the games. Have fun with your families. Be blessed. All college football is good college football.